Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Cam Villa, and I'm your gracious host here on the House Keys podcast of the Sacramento Association of REALTORs. We have a very special guest in the room. We have Mr. CJ Lynch. CJ, welcome to the show.
Hey, I appreciate you, Cam. I'm glad to be here.
Man, it's a little wet and rainy out there, but I feel like there's a lot of sun in here. So I'm glad you came out to the show today, man. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. I second. I was a little questionable coming here with this rain, and the kids this morning, but I got here.
Man, we all got stuff to do, right? So I'm honestly glad that you took time out of your day, because I do know how busy you are, and it's not easy being a realtor out here in the world. And I really just kind of want to hear how you got into real estate, because you really do have such an interesting story, and I want you to initially kind of touch on that.
Absolutely. Cam, again, I appreciate you being here. I'm excited. I listened to the podcast, so kind of surreal to be sitting here. And I actually shared with you, this is my first time being on one, and so I'm juiced. So, man, how I came into this space? Well, one, I'm second generation real estate. Had no idea that this was going to be a calling of mine. But I think for most people that are second generation real estate like me, you know, I started going into the office at 16 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I started kind of checking out the environment. I thought it was really cool, fast paced, right? But I still had no idea what the heck they were doing.
Yeah.
Right. I just seen a lot of, there was a lot of hustle and bustle in the earlier 2000s. So it was pretty dope. And then there was a point about 7-8 years ago where I was ready to kind of make a transition.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I came from my background, as I worked in the education space.
Yeah.
And so my brother had brought up a good point. You know, he was like, hey, did you ever consider working with Pops? And I'm like, for most people with their parents, you're like, heck no. Like, do you know this guy?
That's scary, right?
It's definitely scary, but we always talk about like institutional knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things you don't want to let that go.
Yeah.
And so we looked at passing the torch, and, my dad and I, we had a heart-to-heart conversation, and he knew, where my heart's always in terms of, it's always around impact and how can I help families, and he helped me understand what that translation would look like from working with, within the youth development space and families, how that looks like in real estate,
Mm-hmm.
Because that's not what I knew.
Yeah.
Right. It was very driven by money, and I didn't really hear much of the impact on the back end. And then when he shared it with me, I was like, okay, I think I can make that transition. And I was doing in the education space for probably about 13 years prior.
Yeah.
So that's how I got into it. And you painted a good picture for me.
Did you ever think, like, looking back now, how much impact you've had on families and like neighborhoods and like, we always say the thing generating wealth, but I feel like for 99% of us, the only way to generate wealth is through this real estate action of owning a home. Like, did you ever think that you'd be helping so many people like at this point in your career?
Well, I think like most folks, when you're doing, I guess you can say just good work, you never take a step back and really acknowledge and look at the impact you're making.
Yeah.
But I think as I was making that transition and I looked back at the education space and the amount of families I worked with, I said, okay, yeah. But in terms of closing that gap of home ownership, like I didn't.
Yeah.
Didn't look at it. But I knew that I got excited when my dad started sharing his stories.
Yeah.
Right. And what it took and how those families' lives changed once they became homeowners.
Yeah.
Whether it was putting their kids through college, whether it was financing businesses, whether it was helping somebody else out financially. I started seeing the translation between both the education and the real estate industry.
But what a great connection with your dad, because I feel like a lot of us, as we get older, we're like not wanting to do what our parents did or doing it opposite or making sure like we're not a part of it. Like, obviously his knowledge and success like brought you in there, and it's almost like you have this dad when you're a kid, but now you have this dad when you're an adult, and like you guys are doing some big things out there, man.
And we're trying. I think it always goes back to trust.
Yeah.
I think it was trust, and we respected him.
Yeah.
Growing up, there was that there was never, hey, I'm your friend, right? I'm your parent.
Yeah.
Just leaning and the things that I'm coaching you on.
Yeah.
They're going to pay off long term. So, even to this day, when it comes to whatever it is my siblings and I are going through, we might lean into and we're like, okay, like there's some institutional knowledge. He's been there.
Yeah.
Let's lean into that. But I had no idea how it was going to have a snowball effect like this.
Now, when you said like before becoming a realtor, you were in like the educational space. Can you expand a little bit like what you were doing out there?
So I was a typical college student that needed a job.
Yeah.
Mentorship is one of those key aspects that we really believe is the core of success.
Yeah.
And so I first started as a coach at Valley High School.
No way.
So I was going to play football at San Jose State and I had an injury. And so I had to pivot.
Yeah.
Right. And so I ended up going to CRC and my brother's coach reached out to me and he was like, hey, are you still playing? I'm like, no. I'm like, would you like to coach?
Yeah.
So I started picking up on the mentor aspect. I was like, man, this is cool. You get a young person, you coach them on something good. You're working with the families.
Yeah.
They see the success and it was excelling on both the academic side and on the field.
Yeah.
So then when I went to San Jose State, I needed a job. I went on Craigslist, right? And there was an after school program called After School All-Stars.
Okay.
I was like, I said, man, I had a good experience. And I started working within those confinements. And I was just, I loved everything about it. And I started seeing there was different ways that you can impact the young people, whether it was during the core day or it was after school and some alignment. So at that time, they were calling it after school programs, but it started changing the purpose that an after school program played. And they started calling it expanding learning. So that's the youth development space.
Yeah.
And so I was doing that for really long time. And then eventually when I moved back to Sacramento in 2014, I opened up my own nonprofit where again, I'm still in the education space, but having a different impact, right? But everything was always around the mentorship.
I always think like the impact that we have on children, like even just paying attention to them, asking how their day is you're changing their life. And it's regular stuff for you and me, but I always go back to that, like, how important it is to the kids. So, I mean, dude, that's really noble of you. Obviously, you needed a job, but to kind of recognize like the power of working with kids, I mean, hats off to you, man.
And everything we do stems back to at one point in our childhood.
Yeah.
I've always watched my dad, right? I think us growing up, it wasn't necessarily the after school program, but it was those positive adults in those communities. And so I seen the way that my dad, his role and all the young people in our neighborhood and play. And so it was easy to kind of make that correlation, but it was also a natural fit.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a natural fit.
Who was the coach over at Valley when you were coaching?
Shoot.
Because Coach Mel Fonts, that's my uncle. Coach Mel, I think, was before that coach. But, man, Valley had some great football programs when I was a young kid.
Absolutely.
Man.
I can't remember who the varsity coach was at that time, but we had a whole new, I coached with, it was like Coach Ricky. There was a friend of mine, Maurice. So we were all JV. Yeah. And they went from their freshman year not winning a game to us starting off the season winning about 5 games. And after that, grades happened. And
right now I'm coaching a high school rugby team over at Rancho Cordova High School. And it's like, so much energy being around these kids, but these kids are different from when you and I were kids.
That keeps you healthy and
I'm learning a lot. I'm learning a lot of new vocabulary. That's what I tell my wife when I come home. So, like, I want to hear kind of some like personal stories because obviously, like, you're always talking about this civic duty. You were also a campaign manager. Like, you've been in kind of that political space. So, one of the things I think, like education, politics. I mean, I think real estate's one of the hardest jobs. But,
absolutely.
But education and politics, like that is a lot of pressure.
But all of what I experienced, even in the education space and working in the politics, ties into what I do as a realtor. Yeah. I just kind of fell into the politics space. There was no traditional channels and outlets that I worked through. In working in the kind of the local politics, there's a lot of different roles that you can play. And because I didn't grow up and it wasn't happening in our house, we weren't talking as much. When I was starting to teach it, I was like, man, this is really interesting. So, but a friend of mine ran for SCOE and I was just on his campaign. And like most times, like even in my new leadership roles here, I just had a voice and I started speaking up and I have really good organizational skills. Yeah. And so I didn't see things progressing and I just sort of gave myself the role. Yeah. And it kind of progressed from there. We did really, really, really well. We were pretty close at that time. He ran against Karina Talamontes, that's now city council. And then I had another opportunity to help somebody run for city council for District 2. And then also when my brother ran for city council, I worked on his advisory council. So it was just, I don't know, I started understanding there's different ways that how this impacts us on a local level.
Yeah.
And because the education space is really important to me, I have a way of explaining things in different ways that I feel like can help people understand things.
I like that you touched on the connection, like, of being a realtor now, because I do believe that a realtor is one of the first forefronts for the community to learn about where they're moving to or where they want to live. Like, you have to have that knowledge, like, when they're ready to ask the questions. I think that's one of the big jobs of a realtor that, like, often goes unnoticed. Like, no one's there to answer those questions for a buyer or a seller. And it's like, you're that person.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're changing communities.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I even talk to my team about. Is like, we're not just helping somebody find a home. Like, they're literally people that when you understand where your property taxes go, right? Like, all of those different little nuances, like, we're literally shaping these communities.
Yeah.
Right. And we're helping and getting folks motivated about the areas that they're moving into and see how they can continue to shape them.
Absolutely. Because I feel like we have a lot of people in our community that want to get involved, don't know the steps to take. And it's like, when you move to a new community, like, those are things that have to happen.
What's intimidating,
Yeah.
right? Because you always feel, and it goes back to education, like you have to have so much information at your disposal. And then how do you convey that?
Yeah.
But in today's age, at least they can go on YouTube, right? And you can get some information firsthand, but then you should spend a little bit more time in terms of how that actually impacts you. But it's intimidating.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think are some, like, misconceptions that people might not understand about, like, the real estate business or the industry itself?
Oh, misconceptions. That is possible.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times people, when I say it's possible, a lot of times people think when you want to buy a home, let's just say buy a home or even sell a home, that it takes a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think it's because the information that we have out there doesn't truly paint the entire picture of what the steps are. So I just think there's too much information out there. Yeah.
I think also, like, a lot of folks don't understand about putting together a plan, right? Like, they want to buy a house now, they find out they might not be able to, and it's like, that's it. But I feel like our job in the real estate industry is to provide a plan. If it's not now, then it's when.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that trust, right? And we're in the business of relationship.
Yeah.
When you're in the business of relationships, and we all had to have established relationships, and establishing relationship takes time.
Yeah.
And when I feel like if we're able to do that, people won't have as many misconceptions about what is happening in our industry, right? Because they know that they have some trusted person in our industry,
Mm-hmm.
a real estate professional that they can go to, and they can help diagnose their problems, right? And help give them the necessary next steps to be able to be a homeowner, right? Or to be able to have a successful sale.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think are some trends that we're, like, starting to see in our industry?
I'm always thinking about trends, but I feel like at this moment, we've already been doing it, but it's more about how we package it, is our value proposition.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's, to me, is the biggest thing right now. Folks are having a hard time of thinking like, all right, they've been doing it, right? You're already a good person, right? If you have good character, and it's a matter of being able to convey that to a buyer.
Yeah.
Right. But I think they're overhyping it though.
Agreed. I think a lot of the stuff, it's like, we only see social media, but that, like, you also have to show up. You got to go to the events. You got to be a part of the association. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's not a marketing package, but you do have to advertise yourself at every opportunity.
Yeah. And then it's commercialized too, the way that their approach is on how you go about, showing your value proposition, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the part that's kind of mixed up. You think you have to have every piece of technology, the best PowerPoints. At the end of the day, it's sitting down with somebody, right?
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's literally when I say what I feel is the trend is, like, people are just trying to figure out, how do I tell you I'm really good at what I do and I can help you see this through?
Yeah. Yeah. I've really been trying to meet people in person over these last 2 years. I mean, I feel like we're in such a singular industry, meaning that you can find success doing 15, 20, 30 transactions. And I want to try to meet every client because I know if I sit down with them, then they're going to feel that trust and that energy that I want to bring to the table.
Yeah, there's power to that. It's huge. I think every time I talk to somebody on the phone, you know, I'm not going to be on there 45 minutes. I'm going to give you 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then we need to connect.
Yeah.
Right. It's simple. It's breaking bread.
Yeah.
Literally, when we start talking about what breaking bread, it goes back to our Lord Savior, right? Like literally breaking bread. Let's sit around and talk about that because, again, those misconceptions won't happen when you and I can sit down. You can read my body language. You can hear my tone. You can feel my energy. Then we're creating some synergy together, and then it's easier with that trust. But we're in an age where we rely so much on Google. You know, and the reality is I tell my clients, well, who puts that information in Google? That's me. Yeah. That's you. Yeah. Right. We are the Google version, right? Google doesn't get it into us. And I tell people that they're like, oh, okay. But you would prefer to take your time to go on Google and type up real estate related questions when you got individuals that are out there in the trenches every day that can give you these answers you need.
I just like talking about real estate. Some people come to me and say, hey, I don't know if I'm ready to buy a home or, you know, I might not be in the position. I just like having the conversation with them. Yeah. I love what we do.
There's so much to what we do, but I just like you, I enjoy those opportunities. Yeah. Right. I have a good amount of folks that are in positions, you know, that might be a little bit more educated, but there's always some missing pieces. But I look forward to those opportunities because that's where I think I thrive in the most is filling in those gaps. Yeah. Like I know that I'm that type of person that could fill in a gap to get you to point A to point B and probably a lot faster than most folks just because I can just tie it together and I can give it to you in 30 different ways.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, you and I, we've gotten to cross paths over like these last couple years in this Sacramento Association of REALTORs. Like what kind of committees or what have you been doing in the association over these last couple of years?
So last year I was able to participate in the community outreach committee and the professional development committee just as a member. Yeah. And I think right away, and that's where I met you in the community outreach one. I was like, man, who is this guy? This guy's dope, right? Which is why you're on this podcast. So, and I got a chance and I learned so much about myself. I've learned so much about the value that those members play in terms of advising our board of directors, and how it shapes every experience that our members have. Yeah. You know, and then I was given the opportunity to step into a leadership dish role, and now I'm the chair for the professional development committee. Again, it's really ironic given the fact that I'm really big on the education space. Yeah. Yeah. Right. And when I was given that opportunity, I was like, okay. And then I was blessed with the members that are in the committee. I'm just like, well, where do these folks come from?
What does the professional development committee do?
I mean, what
don't you do?
So the biggest thing is making sure that we have relevant professional development opportunities that are for our members, right? Yeah. So I think that's something that it's difficult to capture, right? Because it's where do you get that from? Mm-hmm. So if it's, hey, let's, looking at how do our members find off-market opportunities, right? And how do you go about that in an ethical way, right? If we see that as a need, well, how do we present that as a learning opportunity for them to experience that? Yeah. We also support the internship subcommittee. Okay. I
feel like you guys have to obviously do a lot of listening too, right? We got to find out what our members want, what they're lacking, like what they're asking and kind of go from there.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I think this year we're taking a little bit of a different spin. We're based on the folks that are in there. I think we're focused more on the mechanisms to do that. Yeah. And before we were trying to fill too many of the gaps. And it's also how we support our sister or sibling organizations and some of the other things and shining light on those so we can, because a lot of our members, they don't know that these resources are here. Yeah. And that's one of our jobs is to be really collaborative and to shine light on them.
I think that's a great idea. I've always found you to be really motivational. I know you and I haven't spent a lot of time outside. We're going to have to go get some lunch together soon here, but you're always motivating and inspiring. How did you get into that headspace? What do you do to get there?
Oh, man. I've always been self-motivated.
Yeah.
I've always been that way. And it stems back from my childhood,
Mhm.
right? I can really only rely on myself, but I know who's in my corner. I think there's different seasons for motivation.
Yeah.
And when I took that pledge, one for my wife, right? And then we brought our 2 kids into this world. That's another whole fire right there.
Yeah.
Because I now think I have more years behind me than I have in front of me. I know I'm not that old, but that's how I see it.
Yeah.
And I think about the opportunities I want to create, and that creates everything becomes even more time sensitive. But it's kind of cliche, but it's for my kids, and I really want to lay a path, create some channels for them to be able to walk in. But I feel like, I don't know, it kind of just runs in our family too.
Yeah. It seems that way. It seems that way. What do you like doing like in your free time? Like when you got it, right? Like probably don't get too much free time with 2 kids, but like what do you like to do? You got some hobbies and stuff?
Yeah, it's funny. I was telling my wife, and when I do get in these spaces to share that, I like to binge watch TV.
Yeah.
Because that's the only time, because I feel like every moment that I do have, I'm thinking how to build my tool belt, and that comes from information. So whether it's listening to things, but if I can binge watch, right, I'm the guy that my client will text me at 1 o'clock in the morning. Is it too late? No, because I'm probably binge watching something on Netflix.
Can we get some shows like that you recommend?
Well,
like,
I'll tell you, ironically, last night I was watching this show with Tom Hanks on Netflix called Here.
Okay.
And it had to do with houses, right? And memories. And it showed like the times from like the 1900s and all the folks that lived in those homes and the stories or whatnot. But I'm the type of guy that will be watching shows that are subtitles. Like my kids are like, what the heck are we watching? I'm like, time for you to go in the other room. Like, or you're going to be learning French right now.
Yeah.
Right? But I literally watch everything and anything. But also my hobbies, not necessarily a hobby, it's more like an outlet, and it means something different, which is, being physically active, like going to the gym. It means something different now. And based on what we do, you need these outlets.
You need an outlet, and it's not about building muscles, right?
No.
It's about building the mindset to be able to jump into this thing. I 100% agree. I almost need something that beats me up so bad that I can like step away from being a mortgage lender to like just kind of trying to re-enjoy like life itself. And I'm with you on that, man. That's why I'm working out.
I like how you said it, like beat you up. That's literally my job, is when I get in there, it allows me not to focus on real estate. Even though some folks, it is a good place if you're connecting with somebody, right? And eventually it comes up. But for the most part, when I'm in there, it's not to talk about real estate. It's to go in there and beat myself up and then get out of there. And I'm like, and it recharges, but it means a lot, because I also, having such young kids, we were talking like I'm injury prone. I'm walking up the stairs, and on the 6th stair, I'm like, shoot, my ankle hurts, right? But I think about, that long-term longevity with my kids. So making sure I have that outlet to stay healthy, but also either for my kids when they're 50, 60 years old.
Yeah. Where do you live in the Sacramento region?
So I'm over in the North Natomas area. So I've experienced all of Natomas. I started off in South Natomas. Each 95833, 95834, 95835. I've been in Natomas for 10 years.
So you've seen a lot of change.
I've seen a lot of change. And it's been change that reflects Sacramento. Yeah. I've helped a lot of families transition and relocate into Sacramento. And one of the places I'm always hyping on is Natomas, right? Kind of 2 standpoints. It touches bases on from an economic level where you can start off and work your way up. And I think that's the American dream, right? And then if you have kids, or even if it's you as an adult, like it's a melting pot of different creeds, races, languages. It's just everything. Yeah. And then the access to parks and freeways, it's a beautiful place.
I like the food. I think Natomas has some good restaurants.
But let me tell you, the cool thing is why I like how close we are to downtown.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like that's the beauty. So if you're a family and you're like, I need a mom and dad type, night, it's easy to jump in that Uber or Lyft and get there in 8 minutes.
I think one of the best things that I ever did for my business was start it or have it in Natomas. Like I'm on the chamber, just seeing the growth. But I'm with you. Like, what area in Sacramento do you get an opportunity to find an affordable house? Or if you want to, when you're moving up in the world, like, but you get to still be in that same area. Like, I don't think there's many places in Sacramento that allow for something like that.
Yeah. I think when you're thinking about moving to Natomas, you have to look at it from an investment standpoint, whether it's your first home or not, right? Because that you'll build the most equity the fastest living in Natomas. So there is a little bit more of a sacrifice, right? When you're getting there as your first home, you're not going to get all the bells and whistles.
Yeah.
But I think you'll get there and be able to get to that second home a lot faster than most areas in our city.
Yeah.
I don't think there's not one area in particular. I think it goes back to the strategy of the client.
Yeah.
It's kind of get in where you fit in and understand there's a little bit of compromise when getting there, even with the medium home range in that Natomas area, because you can get a 3.2, even around like 1,100 square feet in South Natomas and still be in the low fives.
Yeah. Yeah.
And get a decent sized backyard.
I really like the opportunity of education in Natomas. You can be part of the public schools. You can hop in the charter schools. They have art schools. Like, it's very interesting. I live kind of in the south area of Sacramento, and I'll just say it straight. I don't think we're afforded the same educational opportunities that you can find in Natomas.
Yeah, and that's the unique part about it. Again, it's a melting pot of opportunities, right? And that's what I was saying in terms of being able to start at an entry level somewhere and then work your way up. Because my daughter's getting ready to go to TK in August, which is exciting because now we're starting to kind of dabble back into that space. Yeah. And I also have friends that sit on the school board, and I'm getting a chance to. Now it's different. You have a different lens as a parent looking at the education system, but Natomas does offer whatever your need or want is. Again, I think because you can start at an entry point in Natomas and then you can work your way up, because even when you get into the public charter schools or the private charter schools, there's still a lottery, right? But at least you're within 2-3 miles wherever you're at in Natomas to get there.
Yeah. So you live in Natomas, but Red Dog Real Estate, you guys are centered in downtown Sacramento. I'm sure you've seen a whole lot of changes in the downtown area.
Oh man, I'm constantly seeing them. I know we talked about this, and I like the vibe. Yeah, I love the vibe, and it's starting from the old Sac, right, going down K Street. I think truly Doko being there, I think that's the core of what we're doing there, because that's really inspiring other folks to move their restaurants here, for folks to move their restaurants from different areas of Sacramento to say, no, we're going to get it downtown. Yeah. And they've really cleaned it up. And I have seen the resources there that they're trying to close the gap on homelessness and things of that nature. But I love it. I can't see us being anywhere else.
I think a lot of the people that might have like a negative feeling about downtown just hasn't been in downtown enough. That's it. I love downtown Sacramento.
I think the drawback for most people, it's just, they always say parking. And it's the truth. I mean, that's any downtown you go to, right? We're not quite a metropolitan city. I know we're trying to get there. Yeah. But that's the drawback, is parking is normally a challenge, and comes a ticket. But in terms of being able to meet your needs and what you're looking for as far as entertainment, food, social gatherings, events, like we have that there, and it's happening. Yeah. And so you just got to give it a space, and maybe we need to do a better job of showing folks where parking's available at.
Agreed. But I also like that, like with the Sacramento, with the weather, the climate, like downtown's year round things are happening. That's my favorite part.
Absolutely. I love that. And then the public transportation makes it really easy too. Yeah. And it even makes it even easier for young folks to experience downtown.
I like that. What advice, if we were going to give advice to someone getting in our industry, like what would you tell them, or maybe even tell yourself when you first started? Like, what would be some advice?
Get started in our association. Yeah. Right. I understand
get in the building, right?
You got to, but it's also intimidating. Yeah. I've had this conversation with our team. We have all new agents, even some that have been doing this a long time. I think the fear of it is because a lot of the folks in that participate, right? It's intimidating because they're all seasoned. Yeah. Right. But then we're trying to change that and close that gap. But I would say figure a way out to even go to our general meetings, right? It's happening. Like, the answers are here. And I think the more you familiarize yourself with the resources here outside of the brokerage, right? Like, your transition into this space and these resources are at your disposal, like, it will excel you a lot faster.
That makes sense. Yeah. I think that stepping into the rooms, trying to find a mentor, but it is scary, especially like when we're in a business that's considered 100% commission, you got that thought in the back of your mind that, hey, is this action going to yield me, funds in my pocket? I think there's obviously a bigger picture, but you and I have met so many people in these rooms that are very important realtors, lenders, preferred partners. Like they've changed my life.
And absolute same here. I mean, other than my dad, his involvement in our association he hasn't really been active, but he always encouraged me to do it. But when I met Franco was the one that I don't know. He seen something. He had shared with me my involvement, and I know he's very involved. Then we sat down, we had coffee, and I was like, based on what he was learning about me, he was sharing hey, this is where I think would be a good fit for you. Yeah. And then when I met Jessica Coates, I'm like, oh goodness. And she's extremely motivated, and just brings all the energy. And she was encouraging me as well. And I'm like, I guess somebody's seeing something in me. Yeah. Right. And, but I just feel like it's game changing when we can get our members to see the value. And I think it's just our job for them to see the value in what we're bringing here and the resources at their disposal, because it won't take them long to see where they have to get, but I heard you also talk about the mentorship. Yeah. So we might need the OGs to start stepping up and just saying, hey.
Well, just the association itself, one, I feel like it cuts the learning curve. You get to meet a whole lot of great people in here. Just being on a committee and seeing that, because with real estate, there are so many leaders, and for all those leaders to be under one roof for some of these actions, I'm just happy to be a member.
It's insane. And this year is when I'm really seeing it. Like I shared sitting in our first meeting, Trust Development Committee, and I'm sitting around and I'm looking like, man, these are some bright people. Yeah. Right. These are some bright leaders. And I'm like, does everybody else know how bright they are? And I'm sure they do, right, in their respective spaces. But again, if we had more folks that didn't get involved, if they seen that they are at their disposal and they're willing to help whoever, I think everybody that's involved is selfless. Everybody that volunteers their time here is selfless, and it comes from a good place. Yeah. But again, if you're brand new, just take a leap of faith, right? And
hop in the pool, the water's warm, man.
That's it. Even though it's cold today, but it's warm here at SAR.
Yeah. Hey, CJ, thanks so much for coming out here today, man. This was an awesome conversation. I'm happy for members to introduce themselves to you. Like, if you haven't met CJ yet, man, you got to go out of your way, put out a hand. He's seriously the guy that you want to be around in these rooms, man. So thanks so much for coming out here today.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you having me. And I appreciate SAR for putting this podcast on. And Cam, again, you the man.
Hey, I'm not going to argue that. Hey, to all of our members out there at the Sacramento Association of REALTORs, I want to thank everyone for showing up, having a listen. I want to thank our silent engineer, Mr. Spencer Williams over here, and I look forward to the next episode of the House Keys podcast.